Hey, how's it going everyone? This is YLAM here. In today's Fuji Friday, I got some more news to cover. There's actually quite a bit of it because I've kind of been slacking off on it. So let's go ahead and get right into it. There's going to be a lot of news articles that I'm going to be referencing. I'll put the links below if you want to read them because I'm only going to be covering small little tidbits about them. So it's definitely worth a read. The newest one that I'm going to cover right away is from DPReviews. This is where they were interviewing a manager about medium format, and there's a couple of interesting things that I want to cover and some of my thoughts on that. The first thing that they mention is that the full frame market is about 33% of the market, and that's one of the big reasons why Fuji isn't making a full frame sensor, but instead they're jumping over to medium format. But it is a fairly interesting thing to note that as much as photographers and people on YouTube want to talk about full frame, it is not the vast majority. In fact, there's a lot of people still on APS-C and micro four thirds, and it looks like it's going to continue that way because of the decline of the DSLR market. And also, fundamentally speaking, I'm going to stick with what I said before, and it's that most people are very happy with their image quality, so bumping up to a large sensor isn't something that they're worried about. So this kind of falls in line with what I'm thinking. The more interesting thing that I want to talk about is how Fuji is changing the medium format market. So the medium format market took up 1% of the camera market, and since Fuji has released their GFX line, it has doubled, going to 2%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but considering the cost and how much it actually takes in order to actually get into medium format, that seems like a pretty substantial jump. But until we actually get some more numbers, I'm really not sure, but it is fairly interesting. A couple of other interesting statistics. The people that are buying into medium format, their GFX market, 70% of them are from different brands. So they're actually taking customers away from their competitors. So again, those seem to be pretty promising numbers. So I think there is something to medium format, and I don't think Fuji is going to go away from medium format because I think they see enough potential where they will continue investing in medium format. Before moving off the medium format talk, there's one thing that I do want to say, and it's the fact that a lot of people think that medium format isn't needed because they have full frame, and they think that Fuji should always enter full frame, but they don't really consider moving up to medium format. And the reason why I think that's funny is because when you look at the sensor tech stack, a lot of people believe that micro four thirds is going to go away. So if micro four thirds goes away, all of a sudden the tech stack for the technology of sensors becomes smaller if the top tier doesn't move up. If the top tier does move up, it moves up to medium format, and traditionally speaking, that's how technology works, is that the tech stack doesn't want to get smaller. It actually wants to get bigger or stay the same. So if you believe micro four thirds is actually going away specifically for photography, I think it's actually fine for video. It's in fact an amazing sensor for video. But if you think for photography, micro four thirds is going away, then the tech stack actually shifts up, meaning that it will include medium format into the tech stack because that's how technology works. The market share never wants to grow smaller because that means there's less variety, there's less innovation, and therefore there's less money coming into the market. It always wants to expand. So in this particular scenario, I find it very strange that a lot of people don't accept medium format, but they do accept that micro four thirds is going away because it has to be both. It has to be micro four thirds go away and then medium format comes in to replace it, because if not, it's going to grow smaller. And then if APS-C goes away, all of a sudden we have this small tech stack in which there's very little variety, very little innovation. And then what are you going to do? You're essentially killing your own market. So anybody who doesn't believe medium format isn't coming, then what you're essentially saying is that we're going to stay stagnant in sensor technology. Eventually, pretty much all sensor sizes, they're going to chip away at everything that's easy. And one of the things that always happens is bigger is always better. And this is one of the reasons why I do keep track of the medium format Fuji cameras, but I'm really not sold on it because I think the technology is still very young, but eventually that technology is going to mature and it's going to be just as good and just as competitive as full frame. And at that point, the camera manufacturers that have invested into medium format, they're going to become very competitive with full frame and they're going to become very dangerous. That's still probably 4 or 5 years out, but that's really something that you should watch for, because as we progress, as technology moves, all of the limitations that people are kind of talking about in medium format, It's a technology problem. It's an algorithm problem. It's something that can be solved with technology, and we're really good at solving technology problems. So I don't really see that as a barrier. All it is how much R&D you're going to invest in that technology, and eventually these companies will solve that technology problem, and then the prices will come down and it'll be available to consumers and people will start buying them, and that segment will grow. That's how it works. That's how I believe it works. Again, you can have your own opinions on that. Feel free to share it in the comments below, but that's all I have to say for medium format. The next thing that I want to talk about is Fuji just released version 4 of their Fuji remote camera app, and I will be doing a full video on that, but the 5-second review is it still sucks. There's still very limited functionality, and I don't think anybody's really going to use it. They really need to up their game when it comes to these mobile apps because they just don't have enough functionality in them. And this, even though it's a 4.0 update, still very minor features. So 5-second review. Moving on to the next news bit. This one is from Sigma, specifically their CEO saying essentially in very nice words that they will not be creating any Sigma lenses for the Fuji X camera system because we're just not a big enough market. In other words, Fuji does not own a big enough part of the camera market for them to really care about us. That's just how it is, but we do have adapters. So if you do like Sigma lenses, you can always buy an EF to X mount adapter and use Sigma lenses that way. So there is a workaround for that. It's just that we're not going to get native glass specifically from Sigma. The next news bit that I want to talk about comes from Imaging Resources. Again, the links are below, but they're saying that the X-T3 is selling 40% better than the X-T2, and that is by a really big margin. So you can tell that the Fuji family of cameras are getting adopted a lot faster. This is because the X-T3 is a fantastic camera. Pretty much across the board, almost all review websites either has ranked this as the best or one of the best cameras in 2018. So really good news that more people are entering the Fuji community, but there is one downside, and that is it's cannibalizing the sales of the X-H1, which has some older technology that people aren't just buying into. So this is definitely one of the problems that Fuji has to solve with the X-H2. And one thing that I will say about this is that I think they really need to up their game in the video department with the X-H2. The reason why I say that is that when it comes to professional photography, there is no like benchmark, spec that says you're a professional camera. Pretty much all of the modern cameras can be professional cameras, but on the video side, that's actually a little bit different. Right now, the X-T3 comes very close to actually meeting the requirements to become a Netflix-capable cinema camera. And I feel like for the X-H2, what they really need to do is they need to make that into a certified Netflix camera. At that point, it becomes pretty much a professional cinema camera. There's nobody in the world that's going to say it's not a professional camera if you meet that requirement, because you would essentially be saying that Netflix isn't professional, which nobody would pay attention to you if you actually said that. So that's one of the things that I would love to see from the Fuji X-H2 is that they really look at the certification for the Netflix camera, because they almost meet it. I know there's a few things that they need to tweak and a few things that they need to add, but once they meet that requirement, it really differentiates that camera from any other mirrorless camera on the market. And also, if you look at that list, there's some really expensive cameras there. So if they can meet that list, keep it around $2,000, it would be an amazing feat. And I think that would actually kind of differentiate itself from the X-T3, because the X-T3 doesn't have to meet that certification. But if the X-H2 does, then there's actually something that really makes the X-H2 kind of special. Now take this with a grain of salt, because I am a video guy, but that would be my suggestion to Fuji if they want to make the X-H2 a little bit different from the X-T3, because right now they do share a lot of similar features with each other, and it is kind of hard to differentiate them apart. The last news bit that I want to talk about comes from Photo Trends. Again, links are below, but it discusses that, eventually the single-digit XTs will actually have in-body stabilization. Right now, we know that Fuji is behind in that specific technology, but they are investing in it, and they know that these camera bodies will eventually need that technology. So that's really good news. And again, this comes back to once this has image stabilization, then it kind of bleeds into what the X-H1 has. So And again, this is the reason why I think the XH2 really needs to dive into the professional cinema market, because I really truly believe in the photography realm, these two camera bodies are going to be always pretty similar, mostly because they're going to share the same type of specs. So, you know, having a little bit more capability on the video side for the XH2, I think that will really do well for the camera line. That's all of the news that I want to talk about this week. Hopefully it wasn't too long. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.